Ethan Caldwell thought he had found the perfect bride in Isabella, but their honeymoon in Bali would expose shocking secrets, ending in betrayal, violence, and murder. Ethan Caldwell was the kind of man who seemed untouchable. Born into wealth and later building his fortune through a string of luxury real estate investments, he lived a life most could only dream of. His name was often found in glossy magazines, standing beside pictures of sprawling mansions or sleek high-rises with his signature stamped across the contracts. To his colleagues, he was confident and sharp. To acquaintances, he was generous and charismatic. Yet behind the curtain of success, there was a loneliness that no amount of wealth could disguise. 2 failed marriages had left him scarred, each ending messier than the last. He longed for stability, for someone who could fill the emptiness that often haunted him when the parties ended and the boardrooms fell silent. That was why, when he met Isabella, it felt like fate had finally given him a reprieve. She was strikingly beautiful, with an elegance that drew attention the moment she entered a room. Their introduction had been arranged through a luxury dating agency that catered exclusively to the wealthy elite, promising discretion and matches tailored for people who valued status. From the very first meeting, Isabella seemed to understand Ethan in a way few others had. She laughed at his jokes, listened intently when he spoke, and carried herself with an air of mystery that intrigued him even more. Their whirlwind romance quickly became the talk of his inner circle. Some of Ethan's friends whispered that things were moving too fast, that love born from such a carefully curated introduction might not be real, but Ethan ignored the voices. For him, Isabella represented everything he had been searching for: beauty, grace, and the promise of loyalty. Within months, he proposed, presenting her with a diamond ring so large it became a conversation piece at every social gathering. The wedding was extravagant, a lavish affair that spared no expense. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, champagne flowed endlessly, and cameras captured every moment as if it were a fairy tale unfolding in real time. But even in the midst of celebration, subtle cracks were present. Ethan's mother quietly voiced her unease, remarking that Isabella seemed too perfect, too polished, almost as though she were performing a role. A few close friends noticed how protective Isabella was of her past, skillfully dodging questions about her family and upbringing. Yet Ethan dismissed all doubts, chalking them up to jealousy or overprotective concerns. He believed in what he saw, and what he saw was the woman of his dreams. Their honeymoon was meant to seal the beginning of their new life together. Ethan had chosen Bali not only for its postcard-perfect scenery, but because it represented escape, far from business calls, contracts, and the constant expectations of his world. He would finally have time to savor his marriage without distraction. They checked into a 5-star villa perched on a cliff, where the sound of crashing waves served as the soundtrack to their days. Ethan felt a sense of pride showing Isabella this world of indulgence, convinced that their future was as bright as the sunsets painting the horizon each evening. What Ethan didn't realize was that beneath the glamour, Isabella carried a secret powerful enough to shatter everything he thought he knew. The truth would not stay hidden forever, and the paradise he envisioned was only the calm before the storm. The island of Bali welcomed Ethan and Isabella with open skies, swaying palm trees, and an air of calm that seemed to wrap itself around the newlyweds like a warm embrace. Their villa was a masterpiece of luxury glass walls, opening to the turquoise ocean, infinity pools cascading into lush greenery, and private staff ensuring every detail of their stay was flawless. Ethan documented everything, his phone filled with snapshots of candlelit dinners, sunrise yoga sessions Isabella persuaded him to join, and champagne toasts overlooking the horizon. To anyone observing, they were the perfect couple living a dream that money had effortlessly purchased. Yet beneath the shimmering veneer of paradise, unease began to stir. Ethan noticed the little things first. Isabella carried her phone with her constantly, even into the bathroom. She would step outside for calls, her voice hushed, words indistinct. When he asked who she was speaking to, she brushed it off with a smile, claiming she was simply checking in with friends who wanted updates on her new life. Ethan wanted to believe her. After all, hadn't he built this honeymoon to prove his trust, his commitment, and his willingness to forget the scars of past relationships? Still, something about her secrecy lingered at the back of his mind, like an itch he couldn't quite scratch. On their 4th evening, the tension grew sharper. The couple prepared for a private beachside dinner organized by the resort torches in the sand, a violinist waiting under a canopy of stars. As Isabella dressed, Ethan searched her suitcase for a small gift he had hidden there earlier. Instead, he stumbled across a bag tucked beneath neatly folded clothes. At first he thought nothing of it, assuming it was simply cosmetics, but curiosity led him to unzip it, and what he found inside stopped him cold. The bag contained documents, identification papers with names and dates that didn't align with the story Isabella had told him. Tucked alongside them were medical items he didn't immediately understand: hormone prescriptions, surgical notes, and correspondence from doctors. Each paper, each detail, chipped away at the picture Ethan thought he knew of his new wife. It was not just a matter of lies about her. Past it was something deeper, something that unraveled the foundation of their marriage entirely. The realization hit him like a physical blow, and in that quiet villa surrounded by paradise, he felt the walls closing in. He replaced everything carefully, his hands trembling, his mind racing. The dinner that night was a blur, the flicker of torches casting long shadows across the sand as Ethan sat stiff, his smile forced, his laughter hollow. Isabella seemed radiant, leaning into him for photos, her eyes glinting in the light. But now Ethan saw her differently. Every gesture felt rehearsed, every word laced with hidden meaning. He could no longer tell if the woman he married was real or a character meticulously crafted to win his trust. The secret weighed on him, burning in his chest, turning the tropical paradise into a suffocating stage where betrayal lurked behind every smile. He knew the confrontation was coming. He also knew it would not end quietly. Ethan's discovery left him restless and uneasy, unable to shake the images of the papers he had found. The villa, once a symbol of romance and comfort, now felt like an elaborate cage. Every sound echoed differently in his ears. Every glance from Isabella carried an undertone of deceit. He replayed the details in his head, how she had brushed off questions about her childhood, how she avoided talking about family, how she carefully curated every piece of her life before him. The perfection now looked staged, and he wondered how he could have missed it. The days that followed grew heavy with tension. Ethan tried to mask his emotions, keeping the secret to himself for a time while he processed the betrayal. At breakfast by the pool, he stirred his coffee without drinking it, watching Isabella laugh at trivial things, her beauty almost mocking him now. At dinners, he drank more than usual, his silence filling the space where charm and conversation once lived. Resort staff noticed the shift, their polite smiles faltering as they sensed the cold air settling over the honeymoon suite. Guests who had seen the couple arrive so joyfully now whispered at how quickly the glow seemed to fade. The confrontation came late one night after Ethan had drowned his rage in wine and whiskey. He could no longer contain his humiliation. The words tumbled out, sharp and bitter, cutting through the humid air of the villa. Isabella's face shifted, her composure cracking for the first time since he had met her. She pleaded, her voice trembling, asking him not to expose her secret, not to destroy the fragile world she had built. Ethan's pride, however, was too wounded to hear her desperation. His mind was consumed with the image of friends, family, and business associates learning the truth. To a man who valued control and reputation above all, the deception was unforgivable. The next day, Isabella appeared calmer, but there was a stiffness in her movements. She lingered by the balcony for long stretches of time, staring at the waves below, as though trapped between two worlds, the one she had constructed and the one about to collapse. Ethan, meanwhile, made plans. He told himself he would end things as soon as they returned home. Annulment, exposure, and a swift cutting off of ties became his focus. He imagined erasing Isabella from his life with the same efficiency he used to close business deals. Yet he underestimated the stakes for her. For Isabella, this marriage was more than love or even companionship, was survival. Her new identity, her chance at wealth and stability, all hinged on Ethan's silence. If he went forward with his threats, everything she had worked to hide would unravel, leaving her not just broken-hearted, but ruined. What Ethan perceived as betrayal, Isabella experienced as the only way she could exist in the world. As the days of the honeymoon wore on, their villa became a battleground of unspoken words, tense silences, and lingering gazes filled with mistrust. By the time their final nights in Bali arrived, the paradise that had been meant to celebrate new beginnings had rotted into something far darker. Ethan was set on exposing the truth, while Isabella was quietly planning how to keep him from taking everything away. Both were locked in a silent war, neither realizing how violently it was about to end. The night that marked the end of their honeymoon began quietly, almost deceptively so. The villa glowed with warm light, the ocean outside reflecting the moon in fractured ripples. Ethan sat alone at the villa's private bar, nursing a glass of whiskey, his thoughts heavy and restless. The more he drank, the louder the storm inside him grew. The discovery of Isabella's secret had festered for days, and now the alcohol only sharpened his bitterness. He replayed the lies in his mind, convincing himself that every smile, every touch, every word she had spoken was nothing but a calculated performance. His pride, bruised and raw, demanded release. When Isabella returned to the villa, the tension between them snapped like a cord stretched too tight. She noticed the half-empty bottle on the counter and the coldness in his eyes. The argument erupted quickly, no longer contained by silence. Ethan accused, his words slurred but vicious, cutting through the air with cruel precision. He threatened to expose her, to humiliate her before his friends, his family, and the business world that respected him. He made it clear that once they left Bali, she would be erased from his life, reduced to a scandal whispered in circles of wealth and power. For Isabella, fear took hold first. The life she had worked to construct, the identity, the marriage, the access to the security Ethan's fortune provided, was hanging by a thread. She pleaded with him, begging for compassion, for secrecy, for anything but the ruin he promised. But the more she begged, the more his anger grew. He mocked her desperation, fueled by alcohol and his own wounded ego. The tropical villa, surrounded by beauty and silence, had become a cage where neither could escape the other's fury. The shouting escalated until objects in the villa bore the brunt of their rage. A glass shattered against the wall, a chair tipped and cracked against the floor. Neighbors in nearby villas later recalled hearing muffled sounds, the unmistakable thud of chaos breaking through the calm night. Ethan, towering and intoxicated, moved closer, his words venomous. Isabella, cornered by fear and anger, felt something shift within her. The fear hardened into rage, a blinding fury born out of desperation. Her eyes fell on the heavy marble statue that decorated the bar counter, its polished surface cool and solid beneath her hand. In a moment of frenzy, she swung it with force, the weight of it colliding with the side of Ethan's head. The sound of impact echoed through the villa, followed by his groan as he staggered, dazed but not defeated. He stumbled toward the door, his hands clawing at the wall, leaving smears of blood where he touched. But Isabella did not stop. The fear of what awaited her if he lived, if he carried out his threats, overwhelmed her. She struck again, the force more violent, driven by panic. Ethan collapsed, his body sprawled across the floor, but still there was movement. In her frenzied state, she attacked repeatedly, each blow erasing the man she had once called her husband. The polished marble floors, once pristine, became splattered with the brutal evidence of what had transpired. By the time silence settled over the villa once more, Ethan lay lifeless, his body broken, the storm of his anger extinguished. Isabella stood over him, trembling, the statue still clutched in her hands, her breath ragged. The ocean outside roared against the cliffs, as if mocking the illusion of paradise that had shattered forever inside the walls of their honeymoon suite. The morning sunlight crept into the villa, cutting through the gauzy curtains and spilling across the polished floors that still bore the marks of violence. Outside, the waves crashed gently against the cliffs, indifferent to the horror that had unfolded just hours earlier. Inside, the once luxurious honeymoon suite was a scene of ruin. The bar was overturned, shards of glass glittered across the tiles, and a dark trail of blood stretched from the living area toward the door. Ethan Caldwell's lifeless body lay crumpled near the entrance, his face barely recognizable, his white linen shirt soaked in red. The silence in the room was thick, broken only by the faint hum of the ceiling fan and the distant call of seabirds. When the resort staff arrived that morning, they were puzzled that the couple hadn't requested breakfast service. Hours passed, and repeated calls to the villa went unanswered. Finally, a staff member used the master key to enter, expecting perhaps that the newlyweds had overslept. The moment the door swung open, a wave of dread hit them. The metallic scent of blood hung in the air, and what they saw inside made one of them scream. Within minutes, security was alerted, and the peaceful resort descended into chaos. Police arrived swiftly, sealing off the villa with yellow tape, while horrified guests watched from nearby balconies. Officers documented everything meticulously: the broken statue that had been used as a weapon, the shattered wine glasses, the blood-stained furniture, and the eerie stillness of the woman sitting motionless near the bed. Isabella was found with her head bowed, her clothes stiff with blood. She made no attempt to run or resist. Her expression was blank, her eyes empty, as if she had already accepted whatever fate awaited her. At the police station, she told a fragmented story, claiming Ethan had attacked her in a drunken rage and she had acted in self, but investigators were quick to notice inconsistencies. There were no defensive wounds on her body, no signs of a struggle that matched her version of events. Instead, the crime scene told a different story, one of sustained, frenzied violence. The blows inflicted on Ethan were excessive, far beyond what would be necessary to protect oneself. The brutality suggested rage, not fear. Further investigation unearthed even more damning evidence. Security cameras from the resort showed Isabella leaving the villa in the early hours of the morning, a bag clutched in her hand. When police searched the disposal area near the service road, they found the bag inside were blood-soaked clothes, a pair of shoes, and a broken bracelet. The timeline became clear. The attack had been deliberate, the cleanup rushed but intentional. Word of Ethan's death spread quickly. By the afternoon, local news stations had picked up the story, and within days it reached international media. Reporters camped outside the resort, hungry for every detail of the scandal involving the wealthy American businessman and his mysterious wife. The revelation of Isabella's hidden past only fueled the fire. What had begun as a romantic getaway had become a global spectacle, with each headline painting her as a deceiver who had turned a dream into a nightmare. As investigators pieced together the final hours of Ethan's life, they saw how paradise had masked the truth. What appeared to be a honeymoon had been the last chapter in a tragic story of lies, pride, and desperation, a story that ended not with love, but with death and a place built for dreams. The courtroom was packed on the morning of Isabella Caldwell's trial. Journalists filled every available seat, cameras flashed outside the courthouse doors, and spectators whispered her name as she was led in wearing a plain gray suit. Gone was the glamorous woman seen in wedding photos and social media posts. Her hair was tied back, her face pale, and her once confident posture replaced by the fragile composure of someone who had spent months in confinement. Yet, when she sat down beside her attorney, she raised her chin slightly as if still determined to control the narrative that had spiraled beyond her reach. The prosecution painted a chilling picture of greed, deceit, and premeditation. They spoke of a woman who had meticulously crafted a facade to marry into wealth, concealing her past and manipulating Ethan's love until the illusion collapsed. Evidence of her lies was laid bare. The hidden debts, the falsified job records, and the messages exchanged with another man proof that she had planned to leave Ethan after securing access to his accounts. The prosecutor's words cut sharply through the courtroom air, describing the murder not as a crime of passion, but as the calculated act of someone who saw no other way out once her secrets were discovered. Isabella's defense team fought desperately to counter that image. They portrayed her as a victim trapped in a toxic marriage, frightened and emotionally broken. They argued that Ethan's discovery of her lies had triggered violence, and that she had reacted out of fear. Her lawyer emphasized the bruises found on her wrists, the frantic 911 call she made after the attack, and her confused mental state when police arrived. Yet, every time the defense built sympathy, the prosecution dismantled it with cold, undeniable facts: the security footage of her disposing evidence, her deliberate attempts to clean the crime scene, and the absence of any defensive wounds on her body. The testimonies were brutal to hear. Resort staff recalled the sounds of shouting late that night, followed by a loud crash. A forensic expert detailed the injuries Ethan sustained, each one more horrifying than the last, confirming he had tried to shield himself before collapsing. And then came the revelation that silenced the courtroom entirely. Ethan had discovered her correspondence with a man she'd met months earlier online. Those messages were filled with plans for a new life, one that would begin once everything was taken care of. As the final days of the trial came to an end, Isabella showed little emotion. She rarely spoke, except for the moments when her lawyer urged her to. Her expression remained eerily calm, even when the jury filed back into the room. The verdict was Swift guilty of second-degree murder. A sharp gasp echoed through the courtroom as the sentence was read: 35 years in prison, with no chance of parole for the first 20. Outside, reporters shouted her name, but Isabella didn't look up as she was escorted away in handcuffs. The world had watched her rise and fall, a story that began with romance and ended in tragedy. In the quiet that followed, Ethan's family finally spoke to the press. His sister's words were simple, but they cut through the noise of speculation and sensationalism. He loved her, he trusted her, and that's what killed him.